The English army lined up, ready for battle one morning in 1429. Across the hill, the French army mirrored their stance. At the front of the French line stood a young girl, Joan d'Arc. She took up her sword at age 17, led the French resistance to English invaders, and turned the tide of war. A peasant girl who saved the Kingdom of France from English domination. Jeanne comes forward and calls out to the English soldiers, "I have a message
for your King Henry. It is a message from God. Go home. If you do not go now, you will be buried in this field."
The siege of Orléans unfolded during the shadowy years of the 100 Years' War, a bitter struggle for the soul of France. It began in 1337, when England's Edward III laid claim to the French throne. The Orléanais region southwest of Paris was of key importance, not only for controlling the Loire River, but also to smoothly connect the English area of operations in the west and the Burgundian area of operations in the east. It was believed that Henry V's dream of conquering all of France would come true if Orléans fell. The Earl of Salisbury, commander of English forces, swiftly moved southeast towards Orléans instead of continuing southwest. By October, he approached Orléans from the south after seizing strategic points along the Loire. Simultaneously, an English detachment led by John de la Pole captured key regions east of Orléans, isolating the city. The French anticipated that the English would aim for the bridge, nearly 400 meters long, that led from the south shore of the Loire into the center of the city of Orléans on the north shore. The bridge passed over the riverine island of Saint Antoine, an optimal location for Salisbury to position English cannons within range of Orléans city center. At the southern end of the bridge stood Les Tourelles, a turreted gatehouse connected by a drawbridge to the southern bank. The French quickly built a substantial earthwork bulwark on the south shore, where most of the troops were stationed, creating a fortified complex to defend the bridge. Nearby, an Augustine friary offered a potential flanking position, but remained unused by them. The siege began with an artillery bombardment, followed by an English assault in the boulevard. Despite fierce French defenses including missile fire, rope nets, scalding oil, and quicklime, the English refrained from a frontal attack and began mining the bulwark. French countermining forced a retreat to the Tourelles, which fell to the English storming the next day. As they withdrew, the French destroyed some bridge arches to impede direct pursuit. The fall of the Tourelles seemed to seal Orléans' fate. However, Marshal de Boussac's timely arrival with substantial French reinforcements prevented the English from repairing the bridge, crossing the river, and taking Orléans immediately. The English suffered another setback 2 days later. Salisbury was supervising the Tourelles when suddenly French cannon fired. The blast sent debris flying, striking Salisbury in the face. He was taken quickly to Mung for help. Despite hopes, he got worse and died a week later. The new commander was William de la Pole, appointed by Bedford in mid-November. De la Pole surrounded the city and planned to starve it into submission, setting up multiple outworks across both banks of the river, including the strategic Isle of Charlemagne. In northeast France, a 17-year-old girl named Jeanne requested to be taken to Charles VII of France, later testifying that she was guided by visions from the Archangel Michael, Saint Margaret, and Saint Catherine to help him save France from English domination. For years, vague prophecies had been circulating in France concerning an armored maiden who would rescue France. Many predicted that she would emerge from Lorraine, where Domremy, Jean's birthplace, lies. When news reached the besieged citizens of Orléans about Jean's journey to meet the king, expectations soared. Escorted by Baudricourt, Jean met the Dauphin Charles. A few days later, after a private meeting, he was convinced of her usefulness. He sent her to Poitiers for examination by church authorities. With their approval, Dauphin Charles accepted her services, providing her with armor, a banner, a page boy, and heralds. Jeanne's first mission was to bring supplies from Blois to Orléans. It was from Blois that Jeanne dispatched her famous missives to the English siege commanders, calling herself the Maiden, and ordering them, in the name of God, to be gone, or I will make you go. The relief convoy, with 400 to 500 soldiers, left Blois on April 27th in a near-religious procession. Jeanne wanted to approach Orléans from the north to fight the English directly. The commanders took a southern route without informing her. Furious at the deception, Jeanne ordered an immediate attack on the English Bastille at Saint-Jean-le-Blanc. The marshals protested and persuaded her to allow the city to be resupplied first. The provisions convoy reached Port Saint-Loup, opposite the English Bastille. French skirmishers contained the English garrison, while boats from Orléans arrived to pick up supplies, Jeanne, and 200 soldiers. One of Jeanne's reputed miracles occurred here. The wind that had brought the boats upriver suddenly reversed, allowing them to sail back to Orléans smoothly under the cover of darkness. Over the next few days, Jeanne boosted morale by parading around Orléans, distributing food to the people and salaries to the garrison. She sent messengers to the English bastions, demanding their departure, but the English jeered and threatened to kill the messengers. Jeanne discussed tactics with John of Dunois, the bastard of Orléans, who directed the city's defense, leading to several heated debates. Later that day, on May 4th, Dunois launched an attack on the eastern English Bastille of Saint-Loup to secure the entry of more provisions convoys. Jeanne nearly missed out on it. She wasn't informed about the plans and had been napping when the assault began, but she hurried to join in. The 400-strong English garrison was vastly outnumbered by the 1,500 French assaulters. After a few hours, Saint-Loup fell, with about 140 English killed and 40 taken prisoner. Some English defenders, captured in the ruins of a nearby church, their lives spared at Jeanne's request. The next day was Ascension Day. Jeanne urged an attack on the largest English outwork, the Bastille of St. Laurent to the west. However, the French captains, knowing its strength and needing rest, convinced her to honor the feast day in peace. Overnight, a war council decided to clear the English bastions to the south, where the enemy was weakest. The operation began in the early morning. Inspired by Jeanne d'Arc, the citizens of Orléans raised militias and arrived at the gates, distressing the professional commanders. Jeanne persuaded the commanders to let the militias join. The French crossed the river on boats, landing on St. Ainan Island. They crossed to the south bank via makeshift pontoon bridge, landing between the bridge complex and Saint-Jean-le-Blanc. The plan was to cut off and take Saint-Jean-le-Blanc from the west, but English commander William Glasdale had already destroyed it and concentrated his troops in the central boulevard Tourelles Augustines complex. Before the French fully disembarked on the south bank, Jeanne d'Arc launched a sudden attack on the boulevard strongpoint. This nearly led to a disaster, as English fire from the Augustines exposed the French flanks. The French retreated to the landing grounds, dragging Jeanne with them. Seeing Jeanne on the run, Glasdale's garrison chased them. But according to legend, Jeanne then turned, raised her holy standard, and cried, "Au nom de!" causing the English to halt and the French to rally. The fleeing French troops turned around and joined her. Watching the turn of events, Gilles de Rais, a French knight, persuaded Jeanne to resume the assault, this time targeting the Bastille of the Augustines instead of the boulevard. After a full day of heavy fighting, the French captured the Augustines just before nightfall. With the Augustines taken, Glasdale's garrison was blockaded in the Boulevard Tourelles complex. Glasdale was isolated, but still had a strong garrison of 700 to 800 troops. Jeanne, injured in the foot during the assault on the Augustines, was recovering in Orléans and missed the war council. Despite being asked to sit out, she joined the French camp, rallying the citizens to raise more levies and repair the bridge for a two-sided attack. The day involved a largely unsuccessful bombardment and attempts to undermine the enemy complex. In the evening, John of Dunois postponed the final assault to the next day. Jeanne, upon hearing this, called for her horse and rode off to pray. She returned to camp, grabbed a ladder, and launched the frontal assault on the boulevard herself, shouting to her troops, "Tout est vostre. Et-y entrez?" The French soldiers surged forward after Jeanne, swarming up the ladders into the boulevard. Early in the assault, Jeanne was struck by a crossbow bolt in the shoulder and was hurriedly taken away. Rumors of her death spread quickly, bolstering the English and shaking French morale. But, in a dramatic turn, Jeanne pulled the bolt out herself and, despite her injury, reappeared on the battlefield. Her return reignited the fighting spirit of the French, inspiring them to press on with renewed vigor. The French pushed the English out of the boulevard, driving them back to the Tourelles. During the retreat, the drawbridge suddenly collapsed, sending Glasdale into the river to his death. Undeterred, the French attacked the Tourelles from both sides. By evening, the partially burning stronghold was in French hands. English losses were severe. By the end of the day, nearly 1,000 English soldiers were killed and 600 taken prisoner. Additionally, 200 French prisoners were found and freed from the complex. With the Boulevard Tourelles taken, the English had no chance. The siege was practically over. On the morning of May 8th, the English troops on the north bank, led by William de la Pole, demolished their outworks and assembled in battle formation near St. Laurent. The French army lined up opposite them. Jeanne comes forward and calls out to the English soldiers, "I have a message for your King Henry. It is a message from God. Go home. If you do not go now, you will be buried in this field." For about an hour, they faced each other without moving. Then, the English withdrew and marched off. Jeanne d'Arc managed to shatter a 6-month siege, transforming certain defeat into triumphant victory in a mere 9 days.